This is pretty gnarly. I'm just on the highway in Ethiopia and I see this, I guess it's an old Hilux. Looks like it's hit something pretty hard. And then so on the ground here is all dead. I guess it's a cow or a goat or something. And check out these vultures. They are going mental. My Jeep has already scared away half of them. But you can see there must nearly be 100 of them tearing whatever it is to shreds. And this Hilux here definitely is seeing better days. Good reason to keep your eyes open on the highway. See how close I can get before they all disappear. They don't like the Jeep very much. Get after the guy, coming through. Taking the Lake Turkana route from Kenya into Ethiopia means I've arrived in Ethiopia with essentially no gas. I was told there'd be a station in the first town I get to, although when I get there, it's definitely not a station like we think of it. I see guys pouring gas out of huge 44-gallon drums, and so I go over to start the negotiation process. A friendly local's happy to translate for me, and in the end, he helps me exchange money and even buy a SIM card for my phone so I have internet. The gas is relatively clean and smells okay, so I go ahead and fill up the main tank of the Jeep. I haven't been in Ethiopia long at all when I realise it's very different to all the other countries I've been through in Africa. While rifles have been a common sight in the hands of military and police, on the entire continent, I've never seen a single regular person carrying a firearm. Here in Ethiopia, just in the first few hours, I see at least 20 guys carrying AK-47s, just like they're a fashion accessory. Some of them have them in their hands, some of them are slung over their shoulders, but they seem to be leaning on them and using them as walking sticks. People just have AK-47s like people in other countries have shoes or hats. It's just a thing that everybody seems to have. Everyone looks really friendly, and so I stop to chat to these friendly guys who of course have their AK-47. They're really happy to pose for photos for me, and after I show some interest in their rifle, they hold it out, happily giving it to me so that I can hold an AK for the first time in my life. They're really happy to pose for photos for me, and after I show some interest in their rifle, they hold it out, happily giving it to me so that I can hold an AK for the first time in my life. I'm surprised by how small and light the rifle is, and to be perfectly honest, the stock is much too short for my liking and doesn't feel very comfortable. So I'm holding the rifle like this, and the older man starts moving the selector back and forward, pantomiming the results of safe, semi-auto and full auto. He does this multiple times while I'm holding the rifle and looking down the sights. Then he looks at me with a strange look on his face and he pulls the magazine out, which is full, and then checks the chamber where there is a round. So the rifle was fully loaded while I was holding onto it. It seems like this only happens in Ethiopia. From southern Ethiopia, I move a little bit north into the mountains to the town of Jinka, where I hope to visit the Mercy people. It's mandatory that I take a guide, and so one jumps in the Jeep and we head out into the tribe one afternoon. It's great to be there in the afternoon because there's no other tourists around, and actually I wander through this village for an hour, just me and the guide translating, and it's an amazing experience to spend time with these Mercy people. They've been living out here for a couple of 100,000 years, and their way of life hasn't changed all that much. The Mercy are famous because the women put plates in their lower lip, I didn't get it on film, but here's the best photo I took showing just how enormous these terracotta plates can be. Ethiopia is in the midst of a huge gas shortage, and once again I've arrived in town on empty. All the stations in town just turn me away, although someone recommends one that's about 10 minutes out. When I get out there, there's already a huge lineup of motorbikes and tuk-tuks waiting for the precious gas to arrive. I join the line, and hour after hour, the line gets longer and the tension builds. Eventually, the owner stands up and makes an announcement, and a local guy translates a little for me, saying that he's going to allow everyone to buy a small amount, and that way everyone will get some. The owner explains he just simply can't buy anymore, there isn't any to have. At this, everyone gets really angry, starts yelling and screaming and revving their engines. I really don't feel safe at all, but I have to get gas. I keep my cameras away, and eventually I get to the front of the line and the owner does let me buy a full tank. I have to be quite honest with you, I didn't feel good at all being involved in that, and I'm happy to move away safely. For the next couple of days, I put down the miles and I move towards the capital of Addis Abba. You can see the road conditions change really quickly from decent pavement to gravel roads and everything in between. It's a beautiful way to explore the country because I have to slow down so much. On one occasion, I buy gas from the black market where guys are happy to sell it to me out of barrels for twice the usual price. And then luckily I arrive in another town just as the truck finishes unloading and I'm easily able to buy a full tank, even filling my auxiliary tank to the brim. I spend a couple of days in the capital of Addis. I have to get visas for the next couple of countries I want to go to. I have to do a couple of small jobs on the Jeep. And of course, I have to spend time drinking delicious Ethiopian coffee on the streets. I also get the hang of ordering Ethiopian food, and soon enough, I'm eating street food with locals with my bare hands. I really enjoy the city, although it is extremely bustling and busy. Here's the footage of me leaving town, and you can see it's really modern. There's an elevated subway, there's sky rises, 3G internet on my phone. It is quite a large modern city, but me, I prefer being out of the cities. As you can see, Addis is one of those cities that just goes on, and then just when you think you're out of the traffic, it goes on some more. As you can see, outside the city, there are some awesome mountain roads to explore, and I have a great time driving into the heart of the mountains in Lalibela, the town that's famous for all the really old churches. I've arrived just before a huge celebration and the town is absolutely bustling. The part that I don't particularly love is all the guys running along and grabbing the Jeep, trying to be my guide. I don't really want a guide, and to be quite honest, I'm a little bit over being treated like a tourist so openly. I really enjoyed my time out in Lake Turkana away from everybody, and being crammed in with all these people really gets to me really fast. So I camped just one night in Lalibela and then head out of town aiming for much bigger mountains. While driving around, I come across this huge procession on the road. I don't know if it's part of the same celebrations or maybe a funeral. I just try to slow down and be as respectful as possible. You can see there's hundreds and hundreds of people here, and they all seem friendly enough, but as I've come to learn in Ethiopia, you can never be exactly certain. I put in a couple of huge days of driving, and I moved from the town of Gondar up into the mountains in Dabark, which are at the foot of the Simien Mountains. I'm meeting up with friends here who've supposedly found a great wild camp, although when I arrive, I'm not at all surprised to find them surrounded by men with AK-47s demanding they're supposed to have paid the national park entry fee. This debacle goes on and on into the night until we eventually just camp in the parking lot of a hotel in Dabark. In the morning when we try to buy permits to enter the national park, the head guy knows all about us and won't have a bar of us trying to share a guide. We have to take a mandatory armed escort, which we find utterly ridiculous, but it's all about providing employment for the locals. So eventually we get all the necessary permits and pay all the fees, and we're on our way into the Simien Mountains. One of the armed guards rides with me, and it's always hilarious to have a guy with an AK-47 riding in the front seat of the Jeep. We ride up and up on the gravel roads, high into the mountains, and the scenery is simply breathtaking. I'm really excited to get back up into fresh air, and in fact, I know I'll be getting higher in elevation than ever before on the continent. The Simiens are home to this super rare species of baboon called gelada. And as you can see, these things are really cool. They have long fur and really expressive faces and personalities. Normally I detest baboons as stupid things who just try to bite and steal stuff, but these ones really have character. And here I am at sunrise hanging out with this guy who took a real interest in me. I sat for over half an hour, and actually he came within a few yards of me before I stood up and shooed him away. I thought it was best not to let him touch me and get too used to people, but this whole herd came down during sunrise and just were picking at the grass and hanging out, really not worried about me at all. I genuinely think he knew when I was taking his photo, and he really enjoyed it. More than once he posed and would hold still and then kind of wait for me to give him a signal before he would move into a different pose. It was hilarious, but I really could tell he was smart enough to know what was going on. After tearing myself away from the cool baboons, I go for a hike way up into the mountains until I get right to the edge in my usual fashion. Later I drive the Jeep to the very summit, just a touch over 14,000 feet, easily the highest I've ever had my Jeep, and certainly the highest I'll drive in Africa. I've really enjoyed my time in the mountains, away from the hustle and bustle, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. I drop all the way back down into Gondar, and here you're seeing what it looked like as I drive through the town. You can see there are hundreds and hundreds of tuk-tuks, and the lineup for gas and diesel is huge. I keep lucking out and finding stations that have gas or have just recently received a delivery of gas. It turns out in this part of the country, diesel is much harder to get, and my friends in their Land Cruiser have a really hard time trying to get any diesel at all. They line up for the better part of a day and still come back to camp empty-handed. My time in Ethiopia has been great, though I have to say it's a difficult country right now. The people are going through a lot of changes with new freedoms, and they're a little bit angry at tourists who are bringing money but only spending it in the city or on the rich tour companies who are based in the city. So the rural people take out this frustration on tourists that are passing through. On more than one occasion, kids threw rocks at the Jeep, and actually there's a solid stone chip now in the rear tailgate. I have to say, Ethiopia's been a difficult country, and for once, I'm happy to leave it in my rear view mirror. Here's my final sunset over Ethiopia. As I said out loud, it looks like a planet.